All right. Well, while a few remaining people join us, I'll just go ahead and kick things off. So good afternoon, I guess good evening now that it's dark outside. My name is Jeff Germack. I'm with the Economic Club of Washington, the Director of Administration here. And I have the pleasure to kick off today's event with you all and welcome you to the final Economic Club Mentor Monday program for the year on today's topic of entrepreneurship and business. So really looking forward to the discussion today. I hope you all are as well. And over the past year, the Economic Club, the education team has been hard at work here. They've organized around a dozen of these Mentor Monday events, along with the annual scholarship program, the summer internship program, and a bunch of seminars. So kudos to the education team for all of their work and our alumni council as well for their guidance too. And of course, welcome to our members and emerging leaders joining us, as well as our scholars and alumni. So Mentor Mondays are great opportunities to connect with your community, your Economic Club community here. So thank you all for joining. We'll have a great discussion in a few moments, followed by some Q&A and then some group networking opportunities. And then after the interview portion, we'll just take a very quick group photo. So hope you all can turn your cameras on for that, leave the cameras on for that. And we'll include that in our monthly newsletter. So now I'll turn things over to Devanya Moore-Porter, who is our Manager of Education Programs and a 2015 Economic Club Scholar. So Devanya, over to you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces. I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator today, and she is a 2017 Economic Club Scholar. So if you bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And you all should be able to see it shortly. So our moderator for this evening is Mila de Souza. Again, she's a 2017 Economic Club Scholar, and she currently works at the Entrepreneur Selection and Growth Associate at the Endeavor Atlanta. She studied intersectional sustainability and industrial complex at Duke University, and she recently graduated in 2021. So congratulations on that, Mila. She was actually selected to create her own major. So she developed that, and it has turned out to be a great opportunity for her. And I look forward to hearing a little bit more about that. She is a 2021 Venture for America Fellow, where she helps to revitalize communities, specifically in Birmingham, Alabama, using entrepreneurship. She started a cupcake drop-off business at age 6, which now supports her entire family. So I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing more about that. So without further ado, Mila, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Devanya. I'm excited to now go into introducing our panelists. So first we have Ernie Jarvis, who is the current CEO and managing principal for Jarvis Commercial Real Estate. Prior experience will be commercial real estate brokerage advisory and managing director of DC's Market Lead. Ernie has also won the Chairman's Award for developing and maintaining best run offices in the entire company, which is actually pretty exciting. So we're excited to jump into that and learn about how you were able to achieve that. And Ernie also served as the Senior Vice President / DC Market Leader at First Potomac Realty Trust. Next, we have Susan, our other panelist for the day. Susan's slide. Yes, Susan is the CEO of Framebridge. Framebridge was founded in 2014 after overpaying for custom framing, which I'm not sure if you guys have done, but it's very expensive. I tried to frame my diploma. It's still not framed. And so before founding that business, before founding her current business, Susan took a hands-on framing course at Embassy Suites in Alexandria. And past experience includes working for technology startups such as Taxi Magic, Revolution Health, and Living Social. And Susan graduated from University of Virginia and Harvard Business School. So I'm excited to talk to you guys and learn about how you guys started this work. And so that being said, let's just jump right into the panel discussion. I explained a little bit about, your businesses at first, but I'd love to hear more about the business that you guys are working on right now. Every entrepreneur has a unique journey. What does yours look like?
Sure. You want me to go first, or I'm happy to do it?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. I'm really very excited about being here this afternoon or this evening. And did I hear that you have a Duke University diploma that's not been framed?
Yes.
Well, you know, all of that. I tell you what, I'm going to cut a deal with Susan. And if we can have one of her locations do the framing, I'm going to pay for it.
Thank you so much.
You have worked too hard, and that's quite an accomplishment. Are you from Washington?
I am, yes.
Well, let me just kick off and say I'm going to please hold me to that commitment. I am a fifth generation Washingtonian, and so I have lived in every quadrant of the city. I grew up in Columbia Heights. In Southwest, I lived in a building called 707th Street. I lived at the corner of Alabama and Branch Avenue, or excuse me, Alabama and Branch Avenue when I was growing up. And my father lived in Northeast on Sargent Road. So I'm part of this fabric of the nation's capital. And when you talk about what developed or what sparked my business idea, we owned a funeral home in the 1400 block of U Street Northwest, a block away from Industrial Bank, a block away from Ben's Chili Bowl. And I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s. When I was 8 years old, we had the riots were on the heels of the assassination of Dr. King. And I sat on my family's funeral home, 8 or 9 years old, and I watched our community burn. You know, there were 13,000 National Guards troops in the District of Columbia, 800 buildings burned. And I was really fascinated by the buildings. We call them bricks and sticks. And most of our community, 8th Street, 14th Street, U Street, parts of Southeast Alabama Avenue were really burned out during the riots. And I became fascinated with the real estate portion of that. So that's what really sparked my interest in real estate and economic development and how we rebuild cities, how we rebuild communities, how we get people to stay in the District of Columbia, and how we get people to move back into the district. So when I was between my junior year and senior year at Howard University, I started working part-time for a real estate appraiser. And for me, the real estate appraisal side was interesting because you learn the numbers of a real estate transaction. And that was a great background for what I wanted to do. The first house I bought was 3 blocks away from Howard University at 1006 Girard Street. I bought it. I raised money from family and friends. I used my income for my first job. I lived with my parents. And I bought it for $36,000 and I sold it for $78,000. Back then, mid 80s, that's a lot of money. It's still a lot of money today. So that's how I started in my real estate business. And so you fast forward, I've had a couple of leadership roles at big commercial real estate companies. How I would imagine that many of you all are familiar with City Center downtown. So I'm an investor in City Center. I'm an investor in Progression Place at the corner of 7th and S Street Northwest, and other large real estate projects within the District of Columbia. I look at all projects from 4-unit apartment buildings up to big mixed-use places. The core of our business is really brokerage. We represent companies and help them find office space. It's a really not a difficult business. It's hard finding a path in it, but we're not creating a cure for COVID. We are really helping companies find office space, and then we try to get them the very best deal. And so as I was looking at this list, and then I'll just be quiet, because it really made me think about what would I have done differently. I would have studied a little harder. I would have had more fun. Many of the young people here on this call, I would imagine, are natives of Washington. I remember Chuck Brown not as an old guy, but as a young guy. And so, I mean, Chuck's older than me, but I spent a lot of time at the Go-Go's, right? I would have done more time there because I had a lot of fun. So worked harder in school. It all worked out. but I would also have more fun. I was very lucky I knew a path about what I wanted to do, and that was to go into real estate. So I was very lucky, but I have 2 sons who are in college, one who knows what they want to do, one who doesn't know what he wants to do. He's a sophomore. I tell them, take your time, expose yourself to everything. Don't get wrapped around the axle about what my major is, what my internship is going to be. Last summer, he worked at Discovery Education, but part-time, I made him work at Ben's Chili Bowl, right? He grew more as an individual by seeing the diversity of our community working at Ben's Chili Bowl. And it's hard work because you got to stand up all day slinging dogs, right? And so he would come home and take a shower. But I think that one opportunity for him to work on U Street in the evenings and the weekend really expanded. So if there's a headline to what I would have done differently, take your time. Don't get so hyper and anxiety filled about anxiety filled. I got to find a major right today. Was that your experience?
Oh yeah, I went to Duke as a psych major, so
Right.
I took quite a turn, and I didn't even start being interested in fashion until college. So I am definitely the confused person who found their way. So to anybody else in college, you'll figure it out for sure.
Exactly. So thank you again for having me.
Yeah. Susan, I'd love to hear your backstory.
Okay, well, you picked up some of the quirk of it in the introduction. So I run a business called Framebridge. I started it 8 years ago, and it is custom picture framing online. Most of our sales come from our website and our app, and also now stores. We have 13 stores. And I started the business, and the sort of the innovation part of it is that we do all of our manufacturing centrally. So we run that too, so that we can offer high quality custom framing at a lower price than traditional, than the frame store on the corner. And the idea for the company came because I had 4 national parks posters that I took to a local frame store. And the posters were really sentimental to me because I had gone on a hiking trips with my sister, and we had collected the posters. But the experience at the frame store was just terrible. The guy was really rude to me. It was not fine art. They were posters. It was extremely expensive, and it took a long time. And so I thought, well, this is really unpleasant. And so I just truly became sort of fixated on this idea of making framing easier. And I talked to everybody I could about, had they ever had something custom framed? And when I talked to people who had, I heard the same exact 2 things. 1, yes, and it was so expensive, I couldn't believe it. And 2, but people were super proud about what they framed. Like the nicest stories about what people framed, really sentimental, or things that just mattered a lot to them. So I thought, people have things that matter to them. It just has to be delivered in a different way. But my path is different than Mila's, who I was not there at 6. I was 37 when I started Framebridge. So I just had a different entrepreneurial path. I had worked in both big company, Accenture, a big consulting firm. I had done some time in government, like anyone really from DC does, or living in DC does. And then I worked for a number of startups, which is amazing experience for starting a startup, but still nothing is the same as starting your own business. So I felt as prepared as you can be from a skills perspective, except as Mila mentioned, I didn't know how to picture frame. So it would be a little presumptuous for me to do that without learning. So I took on the side, I had a day job. I was working for a technology company, and on the side, I learned how to frame just to make sure I wasn't, missing something. And so I'd have a little bit of credibility when I started. So it has been exciting. The whole time really had just a lot of ambition for this business. I wanted to build a big business. And so because of that, I raised venture capital and raised a lot of it. And so I can certainly share the goods and bads of that path. It's certainly a distinct path because you're really making a commitment to others to grow a big business. Really at no time could you say, oh, I'd like this to be a lifestyle business, or I'd like to pull back a little. You have made the decision, you're going to go for broke. But it's been it has allowed me to hire great people along the way, which is exciting. And it's been a lot of fun. I'm in the middle of the holiday season right now. So it is very busy. And it's just amazing. I think I wouldn't, there's a lot I would have done differently probably, but what I would have not believed is that I'm in year 8 now, and it still feels very much like in it, you know, like it feels, it certainly doesn't feel, when you talk to other economic club members and they're in really big organizations and have a different sort of association with their work, you know, mine is really still feels pretty hands-on, even for the size of the company, which is about 700 people. So it's fun, but it's a commitment. You know, you're certainly making, at least in my experience, the entrepreneurial path is full on.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I see we have a question in the chat. I will save those for the end.
Sure.
So don't think I'm ignoring you. I just want to let you know. And something that I love that you both mentioned was you saw a problem and that's what you started your business on, not just because you wanted to or anything. We call it product market fit. You definitely need to be solving an issue that exists out in the world. And I know Susan mentioned this. I don't know if Ernie, you have the same experience, but I think it's so interesting to talk about working a full-time job or school. So doing something full-time and working on your company, and then how to make that transition into only your company. I'm not sure if you experienced that, Ernie, but I know that with college students on the call or even people working full-time jobs, that's something important to talk about.
Yeah, you know, I tell you, one of the things, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is when you're in college, take your time, expose yourself to as many things as possible. Not only will you uncover what you like, you'll quickly uncover what you don't like. My freshman year, I did an internship at IBM in the accounting department. And I knew that I didn't want to be in a big company environment. And there were 50 people in cubes working for one particular manager. And then the career path was to go from the cube environment to try to get that one manager role. I wanted to be out market facing with people, interacting with people instead of looking at spreadsheets. Many people think that's great. My brain is not linear. It works very differently. Susan probably came up at Accenture just the opposite, but now has kind of shifted. So then my next internship, I worked for the local Anheuser-Busch distributor, and that was on New York Avenue. And I was the person who went from liquor store to liquor store selling Anheuser-Busch products, Budweiser, Michelob, all the other stuff. And I liked that. Didn't really like selling beer because I think alcohol was disruptive to our community, but I did like being out and about. So when there was a time for me to go and work for a real estate appraiser in the real estate business, it really combined both. 1, I like people. 2, I like real estate. 3, I like making a profit. So it combined all of those things. So it was through that process of discovering what I didn't like. So when I got to know what I liked, I moved forward with that. During my first 3 or 4 years working for someone, my father instilled in me that every person has to have a part-time job. So I had my full-time job working for someone, and on the side, I looked for real estate deals, but I was passionate about it. So I attacked it with passion and zeal and commitment. I worked harder in the evenings and on the weekends because that's where my passion was to grow my business. And so again, I was very lucky. By the time that I was 27 or 28, I really had identified what I was passionate about.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, I do fashion on the weekends, so I completely understand that, you know, sometimes your job doesn't completely align up with your passion, but it's all a strategic plan, like with my job and everything.
Yeah. I would say, I always say my career makes sense in hindsight. Like I could tell you how everything I did built off of each other, but I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't make any sense while I was going through it. But in hindsight, like I learned something at every stage. And like Ernie says, some of the early jobs I learned the most. I high school and college, I worked at the Gap. And I mean, everything I reference back to the Gap. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, Susan, a quick one directed question. How did you know when it was time for you to let go of your day job with the custom framing and say, let's go full entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I'd say there are two. There's the sort of when you're, I guess, committed enough or emotionally ready, and then when you feel like you can patch it together financially, right? So those are two different pieces, and they had to come together. And so I think in my mind, I thought about Framebridge, and I almost started it, and I wound up taking another job that I thought would feel more entrepreneurial and would sort of scratch the itch of entrepreneurship. It was just at a smaller company, and I thought, oh, well, I'll feel like this is my thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't. It was great. It was a great opportunity, and I appreciate the team there. But I still had the idea for Framebridge, and so I was like, no. I think in my head, I just realized all my waking moments, like you say, you think about fashion, like all my waking moments, I was thinking about this company and how I would bring it together. And so I just knew I would be. I think I remember thinking, like, if someone else does this, I will be so mad. Oh my gosh, like I have this idea and I want to bring it to life, and I cannot let someone else try it. So that was that part. And then the sort of patching it together, I had started to talk to potential investors. Like I had started to build it. I had two engineers who were helping me build the website. I had not paid them. It was like a one day we'll have money and we'll pay you agreement. And so I was building enough, starting to talk to investors. And when I had a line of sight that I thought I was going to get a little bit of funding, or had a closer chance, I quit my day job, focused on it full time. The thing that was a little tricky, and I do think for some types of funding, this becomes the case, is they want to see that you're so committed, you've put your whole self in it, but that's hard to do. So, I tried to bridge it as close as I could, bridge it as close as I could. And then I quit, and then devoted myself full time to the business. And then, also sort of I was married at the time. I made a sort of a commitment to my husband. I'm still married. I made a commitment to my husband, which was like, I remember actually going for ramen and having this, like, I'm going to do this. And he was like, oh my gosh, you're going to do it. And I was like, no, I'm really going to do this. But like, this is the time frame. I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to go all in. Like, give me this time to see if I get anywhere. Nice. So that we could sort of patch it together financially.
Seems like you got somewhere, I would say.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. And then I spent some time living in my sister's apartment in New York, fundraising, talking to investors after that.
Yes. Okay, great. Speaking of investors and fundraising, and we have a little bit of time left. I'd love to talk a little bit about money, how you guys raise money, if you raise, or if you're bootstrapped, how did that work? I feel like that's such a big topic and something that's not talked about a lot. You can have the passion and the drive to start a business, but you also need to have some economic sense. And so tell me a little bit about both of your journeys with that. Well, I know you also worked and built it from the ground up.
So I talked about the first row house I bought with a cousin. We were 2 years out of college, so we didn't have any money. We both stayed at our respective parents' homes. We saved as much money, and then we put together a marketing package. And with that marketing package, it talked about the property, our experience, our vision, the neighborhood. We had a pro forma, which shows the economics of it, what we would buy this property for. And it was just a shell of a row house, what we had to invest in construction, what were the costs of selling it, and then our total profit. We showed it to about 15 people. We got investors from anything from $500 to parents of friends, to one of my uncles was a doctor, and he gave us about $2,500. So this is really small amounts. And then we went to a bank and got a loan. So we did really bootstrap it, but that really continues to go on as I got further in my my career. As I mentioned, we are investors in City Center downtown. It was a huge number of investment dollars that I had to raise. And I went to my wife and I said, I want to take a second trust on our house so I can raise the amount of money to invest. And she said, no, we're not going to do that. Right. And I said, okay. So then we again put together a package showing the opportunity, showing the location 5 blocks away from the White House, talking about what kind of stores are there. And then we shot that around, much like how when Susan went to New York to raise money, she had a series of meetings. She'll talk about that. I had a series of meetings here in Washington, and we were oversubscribed, which means that there was so much enthusiasm for this project, our investment in it, and the returns. We were able to raise money for this. And so it never stops. Even though you may have access to funds, you have to make a good presentation, and it's got to be a sound business opportunity, including how you're going to acknowledge risk and how you're going to mitigate risk, meaning if there are challenges coming up, how are you going to work through them? A big challenge did come up. It was called the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. And so we had to work through that, but our investors stayed with us. We were pretty successful on that project. So we go from project to project, basically using the same investors because they got a return of capital and return on capital. In other words, they make money. They make money, they stay with you. They lose money, you gotta have to create a different kind of vision about why it didn't work and why it will work in the future. We are fortunate to be in Washington, D.C., which is the home and the location of headquarters of the Small Business Administration. If you have an idea, the SBA would be one of the first people that I call on just to vet the idea, get some ideas about how the SBA can help you. They may know banks who are have a small business sensibility, like an industrial bank or Eagle Bank. There are plenty of banks and other wealthy individuals. If you have a good plan, a good vision, and you're committed to it, like Susan was on her project, you can find the money.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really great way of explaining it. It's also really great hearing how you built it from the ground up. I feel like sometimes it's really easy to see on the internet, like, oh, I just raised this much money from this VC fund, but you don't always need VC funds, especially when you have an amazing vision. Yeah. But speaking of VC funds,
no, I think it's true. You don't, and I think there's a lot to say for having full control of things, right? But I did raise venture capital, and it's because it was a little bit what I had learned. I had worked at a number of startups in the city, and so I had seen how they were funded, and so it was a way for me to sort of learn a little bit of that world by working for other startups. So that's how I had learned a little about the world and had a little bit of a place to start when I went to pitch the idea for Framebridge. And Ernie's absolutely right. The presentation matters so much. Like it seems so silly to say that that a deck it matters that much, but it really does. And I think what I learned, it takes a long time and a lot of meetings. And so I really followed every lead. I remember an investor turned me down and said, oh, but I have a friend who was an early investor in Pinterest. And so he likes creative businesses. So he might like you. I mean, that's a stretch, but then I took the train back to New York and met him for a coffee. Like I just followed every lead and had a lot of conversations. And I think the thing I learned most through that process was there's a set number of questions you're going to get asked about your business. And so you'll start to hear them again and again. And so what I learned, which I think is really important, is to be really disciplined about listening to the feedback and figuring out some of it's right, some of it's wrong, but having a really clear way to handle every objection. You know,
Yeah.
for my business, people thought like, well, how often do people custom picture frame? They do it once every 10 years when they move. Okay, that's going to be the big question. And so I thought of, you know, my idea was, well, by making it so easy and affordable, people will do it more often, was the pitch in the beginning days. And then as we grew the business, I had the data to say, look how often people are framing. We obviously created something different here. And so it was really important to understand what was preventing someone from investing in you. I mean, some of it may be just it didn't click with them, or, you know, it won't click with everybody, you know, and part of the process is just getting really okay with being rejected again and again. I mean, like, you know, for at least in my experience for venture capital, when I mean again and again, I mean like 1 out of 200, you know, starts to bite. But you learn a lot during the process. And I actually sort of coached myself to start to like the process, to say like, this is cool. I have this really smart person for a half hour who's going to listen to my business idea. Like, great. You know, how good. I get to tell this person about my idea and I get to learn a little something. And so, yeah, so I did a lot through the process. But I think for me, the other thing that was important was I had to show 2 things. In the beginning, I was better about one of them than the other, and then I got good at both. I had to show that I was credible, like I was going to do what I said I could do, had a credible plan, could pull together a team, could really get done what I said I'd get done. And that part I was pretty good about. You know, as I said, I was a little bit older, so I had some management experience. And so that I could come off credibly, but then I realized like, oh, actually people want to be part of a dream, right? I had to really pitch the idea was big, like we're going to own this whole category and we're going to change the way people celebrate their memories. Like people want to be part of something exciting. And so I was almost presenting 2, like, this is what I can do in the next 3 months, instead of like what we're going to do together in the next 10 years, which is really what investors want to hear as well. And so I really adapted my pitch in those early months.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for that. I loved hearing about that. And we're coming up on time, but I want to make sure we go over the panel's discussions, questions. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Gural, would you like to ask the question out loud?
Hello, everyone. This question was to Susan. When you were considering entering the thing, you said you were studying, you said you talked to a whole bunch of people. Given that you knew how startups are, I'm pretty sure you knew the management part, and as you said, kind of figured out, but you probably needed to know about the industry, about the process. So what are those things that you had to focus on, and if you missed anything, what did you miss? Thanks.
Oh, those are good questions. So I did study the industry as best I could, right? Whatever was public at the time. Michael's, the craft chain, was public, so I could learn something about. They do a lot of custom framing. I could learn some through that. There was actually, you just reminded me of something. There was an industry report online about the custom framing industry, and it cost like $1,000 to buy it, and I bought it, and then it wasn't helpful at all. And I emailed the company and begged them to refund me because it was like all the money I had to start the business, and they did refund me, which is so nice. But there's honestly, there was not as much information as I wish there were out there. I remember there's like a New York Times, I bet you can still find it if you Google, and I know every investor I talked to had already read it too, which said that maybe custom frame shops are like a great economic predictor. Like when the economy has a downturn, custom frame shops go out of business. And so that one article everybody quoted. But then I tried to figure out in other ways, like I just tried to get started. Like, let me call some people who make wood molding. Let me some of the component parts. Let me just call those people and start to talk to them and see if they'll send me samples, and just like learn, sort of not even in a really linear way, just like attack it from all sides and every day be a little bit smarter. So it was a lot of that. What did I miss? I'm actually really proud from the customer perspective. If I look at the early pitch decks from 2013, I mean, we built exactly what we said we'd build, which is fun. Like I knew the problem we wanted to solve, and I was pretty hell-bent on doing it. But I think what I missed was everything was harder and took longer.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susan, for sharing that. And Amir, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. I know you have a question, but we're about to go into breakout room, so you'll get to ask your question in an even smaller setting. So that's exciting. And I'm going to pass it over to Devanya to facilitate that.
Thank you so much. That was such a great panel discussion. I'm excited and really interested to hear more about the scholars' experience and how they enjoy the smaller breakout room. So if you all do not mind, before we go to breakout rooms, could you all come on camera so we can just take a quick snapshot. And then we can use that in our upcoming newsletter. We would just love to see all of your beautiful faces.
And Devanya or Mia, do you want to unpin our panelists here? Then we'll see everyone on the screen.
Sure.
Thanks, Mia.
And while we are unpinning you, I do want to remind you all that you don't have to touch anything. We are going to send you to your breakout rooms. Please don't leave your breakout rooms in advance. But if you do get kicked out, feel free to come back to the main session and we'll replace you back in your rooms. And then we do want you to stay there until about 6:10, and then we're going to come back and do some closing remarks, and then we'll send you all on your way. So I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot in 3, 2, 1. All right, so welcome back. We really hope that you enjoyed those fruitful conversations that you had in your individual personal breakout rooms. I am going to ask that all members and emerging leaders on the call just come off mute and introduce yourselves momentarily, but also if you are able to, if you can share one highlight from the evening, that would be great. And one thing that really stood out for me was something that Susan said, and that's basically, well, both of them kind of hinted at it, but just being able to take that leap of faith and finding your niche, but also think of a creative way to bridge that gap. And that's one thing that stood out to me throughout the duration of this entire event. Even when I joined you all's breakout rooms, you were talking about, being discouraged with job interviews, and someone else was talking about going into a different career path and how to utilize your degree, even though you're not on the right path to be an entrepreneur. So I think that those are all great points. And just wanted to remind you all that anyone can be an entrepreneur. There's no specific degree that you have to study, no areas to, course load that you have to take to succeed in that. So as long as you have a plan, you consult with other people and you carry out your plan, you're all set as an entrepreneur. And I really hope that you all made great connections tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to our members to introduce themselves. And I'm so sorry to put any of you on the spot, but Pam, you are in my radar, so I'm going to call on you first.
I'm sorry, you're calling on me to...
Yes, just to introduce yourself. And if you want to share one highlight from today, that would be great. If not, we'll take the introduction.
Sorry. So I'm Pam Rothenberg. I'm a partner at the law firm of Womble Bond Dickinson. I practice commercial real estate law, and I also work in the impact economy with companies wanting to operate at the intersection of doing well and doing good and addressing endemic social challenges in the way they run their business. I thought the highlights that came through from both of the panelists as well as from Mila was the perseverance and energy and engagement and drive and sort of resilience that you have to bring to whatever you want to do. I loved when Ernie talked about how, you just have to keep going and, not give up, and that he waits for someone to contact him 3 times. So he makes sure that they're serious about their dedication. I think part of what we have to learn when we want to go after something is to just never give up and just put down your shield and sort of keep going no matter what. And it's hard sometimes. And I thought that all of the panelists sort of spoke to that, and it came through pretty clearly to me that was vital.
That's great. Thanks, Pam. And why don't we go over, I see Bob Milkovich, one of our members. Bob?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Bob Milkovich. I'm the CEO for RAND Construction. We're a national general contracting business in 5 cities across the country. I think the thought that I'd like to share with the group is, especially this group, is to take calculated risk. I think most people are very good at identifying risk, but very few people are good at pricing that risk. So, you know, it's easy to say, okay, here's the downside or the pitfalls, but if you can put that in a perspective of value, and then take that forward and make your decisions. We talked earlier in our panel about looking at risk through the lens of one, reputational risk, you know, two would be economic risk, then the third would be personal risk. And if you can kind of use that as a little bit of a filter in viewing risk, I think you'll be wildly successful.
Thank you for that. And next, I'm going to ask Sara to introduce herself. I see you on my radar as well.
Hi, I'm Sara Segno. I am a deals partner at PwC in our deals practice. I am an emerging leader, and this is my first year in the program, so I'm very excited to participate. I've joined a few of these Monday sessions and facilitated one as well, and I found them to be just a great opportunity to connect with people and share ideas and kind of learning lessons. So just want to say thank you to the panelists and certainly everybody else for joining. That's me in a quick nutshell. I'm also from the area. I'm born and raised, and so DC's near and dear to my heart.
Thank you. Did we get everyone?
I think we have Raj Patel. Raj.
Yes, thank you. Raj Patel, I'm the CEO of AEEC, also known as American Consultants. We are a technology and engineering firm based in DC, but operate all over the US. Focused in high tech, you know, AI, ML, machine learning, modernizations of IT systems. So Ernie and Susan, you know, to everyone here, if you just follow the path and the journey they took, these are real life lessons. Yeah, so everything they said today was, you know, very well presented. It's not a theory, and you can see, you know, paths they've taken. They had to take some turns, so there's no one right, you know, process to follow. So very well said, Ernie and Susan, and everybody that participated. I think keep the curiosity level up. You know, your participation in an event like this tells me your trajectory is started already, right? So the curiosity, you know, willingness to learn, I think, is very important. Because you'll keep learning even 30 years from now, right? So very well done. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. And another reason why I encouraged you all to do so is because we're going to send around a participation list along with the email follow-up today. And I wanted the scholars to be able to have names to go along with the face. So please be open to them reaching out to you, asking a bunch of questions. And also right now I'm about to drop the follow-up survey in the chat, but you will receive it in the email as well. If you want to go ahead and complete that, that will be great. But we thank you all so much for your support and your participation on tonight. Again, this is the final Mentor Monday of 2021. So we'll resume again in the spring, but we really hope something was said today to really encourage you along your journey. And we appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you for coming tonight. And you all.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.